Hey everyone! Harry and Meghan, California's self-proclaimed royalty, seem to be in a world of their own, far removed from reality. Their lives have turned into a grand performance, more flash than genuine substance. They speak endlessly about humility and the importance of privacy, yet here they are, holding on to fame while claiming to be victims from the comfort of their lavish estate. It's clear they're not really breaking free from royal life, they're just finding ways to stay center stage, all while posing as down-to-earth underdogs. Honestly, if there were awards for irony, they'd be wearing the top prize. Harry, in his dash to escape the so-called suffocating royal life, somehow ended up in a world that broadcasts every moment of his life. Here's the same person who talks about wanting a normal life, yet seems to be at every opportunity to air his family's issues. For most people, a normal life means working hard, handling responsibilities, and respecting family privacy, not turning personal dramas into Netflix deals or taking primetime slots to air grievances. It's almost comedic. And then there's Meghan, the so-called champion of equality and compassion wrapped in Hollywood luxury and glamour while dishing out lines on social justice. She claims to stand up for the average person, yet her actions tell a different story. She's more focused on perfecting her image than on making any real impact. Her empathy seems as polished and filtered as an Instagram feed, more about show than substance. Their foray into the US political scene, especially with Trump potentially making a comeback, is a spectacle all on its own. The couple has aligned themselves with the Democratic platform, but let's not pretend it's due to deep beliefs. It's all about optics, keeping up with appearances, and staying in favor with Hollywood's elite. Their aversion to Trump isn't really about values, it's about positioning, a move to fit in with the crowd they want to impress. They're not rebels, they're simply image-focused climbers trying to stay relevant. And now there's Harry's visa situation, a twist soaked in irony. The man born into unimaginable privilege, once with a kingdom behind him, is now hoping his past mistakes don't lead to a visa cancellation. His candid admissions of drug use in his memoir might be the very thing to send him packing back to the UK, tail between his legs. Oh, the irony. Here's a prince who fled the restrictions of royal life only to come face to face with the tough realities of American immigration. He might actually get a taste of what accountability feels like, and wouldn't that be a twist? But here's the real punchline. Even if Harry does end up back on a plane to the UK, don't count on Meghan to go with him. She's firmly planted her roots in Hollywood and has no plans to move. Harry's American dream is only as enduring as Meghan's interest in him. He might think he's found freedom, but the truth is he's as free as Meghan wants him to be. It's almost painful watching him act like he's in control when everyone knows she's the one pulling the strings. He's not a liberated prince, he's just Meghan's latest project, a handy accessory for her brand. And let's not ignore the blatant disregard they've shown for both of their families and the institutions that shape them. Harry's endless complaints about the lack of support from his family are ironic, especially coming from someone who's done little but publicly criticize them. And Meghan is no different. She's more than willing to cast herself as the victim wronged at every turn, all while enjoying the perks of her royal title when it suits her. Their selective outrage is both laughable and insulting. They're not fighting for justice, they're just fighting to stay relevant in a world that's quickly tiring of their empty words and shallow gestures. Now, they cling to their so-called independence in Montecito, hoping the world still cares about their never-ending complaints. But the cracks are starting to show. Their story of being misunderstood and mistreated is wearing thin. Actions speak louder than words, and their actions reveal them as attention-seeking opportunists, more interested in exploiting their titles and family connections than actually honoring them. Harry and Meghan have become exactly what they claim to oppose media darlings who use every bit of their influence not to drive change, but to cash in. Their so-called freedom is an illusion, their values feel hollow, and their endless claims of victimhood are as clear as their intentions. They wanted a fresh start, and they got it, but let's face it, it's a life built on smoke and mirrors. Sooner or later, even their most loyal fans are going to see right through it. These self-declared champions of truth and authenticity have somehow turned into the very thing they criticized. Harry and Meghan have turned complaining into an art form. Their endless grievances about the press, the royal family, and honestly the entire world have become a display of privilege and entitlement on an unimaginable scale. They paint themselves as warriors taking on a ruthless media machine, but their demands for privacy feel empty when they're the ones profiting from their so-called victimhood. Privacy, it seems, only matters when it doesn't interfere with their latest Netflix special or ghostwritten memoir. And then there's Harry's infamous list of complaints, where he portrays himself as the tragic prince, somehow both a victim of and too good for the royal institution that raised him. He's built his entire image around rebelling against his family, yet he's fully dependent on the fame that comes with his royal roots. It's almost as if he believes he's the only person to ever experience family struggles. The true irony of Harry's defiance is how utterly ordinary it is. People all over the world face family drama and difficult relationships, but they don't turn it into a $1 million enterprise. Only Harry could turn airing personal grievances into a profitable venture while convincing himself he's standing up for the little guy. Meghan's authenticity campaign adds another layer to the absurdity. She claims to champion women, yet her path to fame is littered with estranged family and burned bridges. Her feminist stance feels more like a branding strategy than a genuine value. For her, empowerment seems to mean self-promotion over sincere support for others. Even her podcast comes off as a glorified vanity project dressed up as a platform for women. Each interview and every story seems carefully designed to keep the spotlight firmly on her version of authenticity. This is narcissism with a PR team, plain and simple. And there's a certain irony in Harry's endless quest for freedom from the royal family. Here's a man who seems completely adrift without the very institution he claims to despise. For someone supposedly tired of media attention, he sure has a talent for attracting it. Every complaint, every exclusive interview only proves how much he actually craves the spotlight he pretends to shun. Harry has built his identity around being the misunderstood outsider, yet he can't seem to step away from the role, constantly needing the royal family as a source of blame. Without them, he'd be just another privileged figure searching for relevance. Their desperate attempt to stay relevant is almost painful to watch. Their approach to social justice is just as laughable. They have the nerve to lecture the world about making a difference, yet their contributions barely scratch the surface. Their philanthropy seems more like a string of photo ops than real efforts to bring about change. They love talking about mental health, for example, but they appear more focused on turning their own struggles into a business venture than actually helping others. Harry's memoir isn't about raising awareness, it's about profiting from a tragic backstory. And Meghan's supposed advocacy for women fades away the moment it doesn't fit her narrative. Real activism demands sacrifice, but for them, it's just another way to build their brand. The hypocrisy is almost impressive. Harry and Meghan claim they want a normal life for their children, yet they can't seem to stay out of the spotlight themselves. They say they want to be relatable, but they live in a multi-million-dollar mansion in Montecito. They claim to want privacy, yet they sign deals with every media company willing to pay for their truth. Somehow, they've convinced themselves they're noble crusaders fighting against injustice, but their actions show them for what they are, people desperate to stay in the spotlight. Even while claiming to despise it, their so-called truth to power is as hollow as it gets. They only take on easy targets, ones that won't jeopardize their Hollywood connections or alienate their fans. Real activists take risks and challenge deeply entrenched systems. But Harry and Meghan pick causes that are trendy and guaranteed to keep them in the news. They're not fearless rebels, they're just two self-centered individuals playing dress-up in the activism world. They cherry-pick issues that will keep them popular without demanding any real sacrifice. Their take on family values is perhaps the most absurd part of their public personas. Harry and Meghan seem to think that cutting off family members and airing their grievances in public somehow makes them virtuous. Meghan's estrangement from her own family and Harry's ongoing feuds with his own show a shocking lack of self-awareness. They preach loyalty and love, yet they've isolated themselves from nearly everyone who once stood by them. Their idea of family seems to revolve around loyalty that only exists if you completely agree with their narrative. Even their much touted financial independence is a facade. They've monetized their every move. Every detail of their personal lives has become part of a multi-million-dollar brand. Their supposed disdain for the traditional royal institution is undermined by their constant reliance on the fame and privilege it gave them. They may say they want nothing to do with royalty, but their actions speak otherwise. They are clinging to the very titles they publicly renounce, using every royal connection to keep their brand relevant. Harry and Meghan's complaints about media intrusion would be almost laughable if they weren't so hypocritical. They criticize the invasion of their privacy, yet they willingly share intimate details of their lives whenever it serves their purposes. For them, privacy isn't a right, it's a tool. They use it to silence criticism and control the narrative. They aren't victims of media exploitation, they're experts at manipulating it. Every public complaint, every emotional interview is simply another chance to keep their names in the headlines while pretending they want to be left alone. In their constant search for relevance, Harry and Meghan have turned into exaggerated versions of themselves. They claim to despise the very system they profit from, preach values they don't embody, and demand sympathy while living in unparalleled luxury. They've convinced themselves they're on a mission to change the world, but the reality is much simpler. They're on a mission to stay in the spotlight no matter the cost. The public is beginning to see through the act, and soon, even their most loyal followers might realize that beneath the glamorous surface lies a couple clinging to fame, privilege, and a carefully curated narrative of victimhood. In the spectacle that is Harry and Meghan's public life, there's an eerie predictability to each chapter. Their narrative is like a script crafted to resemble a Hollywood drama: the misunderstood prince, the embattled heroine, and the villains lurking in the background. But this isn't a story of adversity or triumph, it's a never-ending cycle of grievances and self-promotion. Harry's quest for freedom from his royal past might seem noble, if it weren't so obviously superficial. He distances himself from the monarchy, yet clings to every royal connection as if his entire identity depends on it. And perhaps it does. Without his titles, he's just Harry lost, searching for meaning in a world that no longer fits him. Harry clings to the very institution he claims to despise. He rejects the responsibilities, but the allure of royalty, the titles, the status is simply too intoxicating to give up entirely. It's as if he's trying to build a brand based on rebellion while still desperately holding on to the very thing he's rebelling against. It's the classic case of having your cake and eating it too. Meghan, on the other hand, plays the role of the wronged outsider with a finesse that only years of Hollywood experience could refine. Her relationship with the media is a study in contradictions. She demands privacy and respect, yet never hesitates to step into the spotlight when it serves her narrative. Her brand of feminism is equally puzzling, empowering, yes, but always wrapped in the trappings of celebrity. She champions women's rights, yet her most notable displays of empowerment seem to revolve around public grievances, polished photo shoots, and slickly produced podcasts. As nothing more than a way to keep their brand alive. It's almost as if the more they publicly air their family's dirty laundry, the more they solidify their place in the spotlight. Harry's struggles with mental health, while no doubt real, have become a form of currency. What should be a personal, private journey is repeatedly turned into a public spectacle, and the message becomes secondary to the media attention it generates. Meghan's so-called empowerment also seems to revolve around her own narrative, constantly positioning herself as a victim of the royal family and using that adversity as a springboard for her personal brand. It's hard to ignore the irony of two people who claim to despise the public's obsession with their lives, yet they consistently feed that obsession with exclusive interviews, Netflix deals, podcasts, and memoirs. Their advocacy seems to be less about genuine change and more about maintaining their relevance and controlling their narrative. Privacy is held up as a virtue, yet they're always ready to spill details on every platform. And when it's not about family drama, it's about mental health or social justice, all expertly packaged as the latest chapter in their personal saga. In manipulation, they've somehow managed to create a narrative that paints them as free-thinking, self-sufficient individuals, all while continuing to leverage their royal titles and connections for profit. Their financial independence seems to be based on using their former status as a springboard for lucrative deals with media companies, book publishers, and more. They criticize the royal family for being out of touch with the common people, yet their own lifestyle is a stark contradiction to the independence they claim to have achieved. They may have left the institution, but they've never truly severed their ties with it. They just figured out how to benefit from it without the formal title. Their so-called escape from the monarchy now seems more like a well-crafted publicity stunt designed to present themselves as rebels, all while cashing in on the very thing they claim to despise. The hypocrisy of their so-called financial independence is almost breathtaking as they continue to profit off the very connections they publicly reject. But in reality, they're just playing by a new set of rules that they've crafted to serve their own interests. Every step they take is calculated to maintain their relevance, to keep their names in the headlines, and to keep their brand alive. Their so-called mission to make the world a better place often feels more like an endless PR campaign designed to perpetuate their public personas rather than bring about any real change. When it comes to their political activism, it's all surface level, devoid of substance. They align themselves with causes that feel good to endorse, but don't actually challenge them or ask for any personal sacrifice. It's all about being seen with the right people and standing up for the right causes when it's convenient, anything that keeps them in the spotlight. As for their narrative of privacy and victimhood, it's hard to take seriously when they continue to sell their story to the highest bidder. They've turned their lives into a performance, using every detail of their personal struggles as content for books, documentaries, and interviews. If they really wanted privacy, they could easily choose not to participate in the media circus. But no, they choose to play the game, making sure their voices are always heard only when it suits them. The irony is rich. They claim to want freedom from the royal family and the press, yet their every move seems calculated to keep them front and center in both. It's a brilliant, albeit hypocritical, way to stay relevant, while simultaneously casting themselves as victims of the very systems they continue to exploit. In the end, Harry and Meghan's version of activism is just another part of their brand, one that gives them the image of caring about justice and equality, but never actually requires them to make any real sacrifices or take any significant risks. They've managed to commodify their lives, turning personal grievances into a business, all while portraying themselves as outsiders fighting for the underdog. But the truth is, they've never really been outsiders, they've just rebranded themselves as such in order to sell their story to a new audience. Harry and Meghan have managed to turn their lives into an intricate web of contradictions that continue to baffle and intrigue the public. On one hand, they present themselves as rebels challenging the norms and fighting for justice. On the other, they become emblematic of the very systems they claim to reject. Their fight for freedom and privacy has been turned into a marketing tool, one that capitalizes on their royal ties, media presence, and personal struggles. For all their talk of independence and authenticity, they seem utterly dependent on the very fame they once tried to escape. At the heart of their narrative is an identity crisis that refuses to resolve itself. Harry and Meghan want to define themselves outside of the royal family, yet they cling to the privileges that come with their titles and the platform they built on their royal connection. They claim to reject the very institutions that elevated them, but their actions through Netflix deals, book launches, and public interviews betray a deep reliance on the system they so publicly criticize. It's as if they've crafted a persona of outsider rebellion but are unwilling to step fully outside the spotlight that has made them household names. The irony is hard to ignore. They seek privacy, yet they invite cameras into their lives. They champion social justice, yet their activism often feels shallow, more about personal branding than real change. They are the ultimate paradox activists without a cause, celebrities without humility, victims of a system they continue to exploit. Their attempts to redefine themselves only serve to reinforce their attachment to the very things they claim to reject. In the end, they become symbols of what happens when privilege masquerades as victimhood and self-promotion is cloaked in the language of activism. They've made waves by challenging the norm, but have they truly gained the freedom they say they want? Or are they just creating their own story, one that gets more complicated with every new turn? Whether you see them as misunderstood rebels or skilled self-promoters, there's no denying their story has captured global attention, sparking debates about family loyalty, celebrity culture, and the real cost of fame. But the real question is, are they trailblazers on a new path, or just reusing the same old tactics in a different setting? What's your take on it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the lives and legacies of the world's most talked about figures.